Welcome to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor and Rethink Retail Top Retail Expert for 2024. Each week, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share knowledge, and give you an insight into the retail industry. Listen back to previous episodes on your favourite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. And while you're there, please do subscribe to the podcast so that you get to listen first every single week. So in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. So to celebrate the third anniversary of the Retail Tea Break podcast and the launch of Season 7, I am delighted to be joined by four retail experts. Kicking off with the retail wizard who opened Season 2, Ian Scott. Ian works at a strategic level with brands and retailers, providing insights, assisting with store development, and offering a consumer-centric perspective. Ian hosts retail safaris in major cities around the globe, including London, New York, Chicago, Singapore, and Berlin. He introduced the concept of symbiotic retail, highlighting how all channels need to work together as one ecosystem for the benefit of the shopper. Someone then that needs absolutely no introduction to the Retail Tea Break podcast and long friend of the podcast, author of Breaking Down Barriers and founder of the international retail advisory firm, Chris Igwe International. Chris Igwe provides services to luxury and premier brands, as well as shopping centre owners and high street landlords. His advice is both strategic and implementational, given his vast knowledge of and experience within global retail. Linda Johansen-James, retail trailblazer and founder and CEO of the International Retail Group. The billion-dollar brand maker specialises in brand launches, in-store design, sales training, franchising, and has a track record of generating $1.7 billion in revenue and attracting top brands. And introducing, finally, for the very first time to the Retail Tea Break podcast, an Imagineer and growth architect who believes that growing team and growing consumer bonds is the foundation of a growing business. Passionate about unleashing the synergies between commercial strategy and commercial leadership and intelligence integration into pursuit of building consumer bonds. Torben Valsters, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thank you.
Delighted to have all of you here. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting and wild, shall we say, podcast episodes we've ever recorded. Couldn't have done this with a better bunch of people. No idea how this is going to play out, but I think really why we all wanted to come together is this aspect of celebrating retail. So much has gone on in the last couple of years. You know, retail's never perfect, but we're certainly on a journey. And what I'd love to do today is pick your brains in the areas of retail that I suppose most suit you, but also that you know so much about, to share that knowledge and experience with those listening. So as we know, there's been so much talk over the last few years about the physical store, but as brands announce new locations and others are revamping their existing ones, it's so easy to forget that many retail journeys start with the landlord or developer. So really starting right at the beginning. Chris, then, from all your global retail experience working in this area, why are these relationships just so important to retailers?
Yeah, great question, Melissa. Firstly, they are fundamental because, like any relationship, it's about two parties, two individuals, or two companies. In this case, you have the tenant, retailer, and you have the landlord, developer, or whatever. And of course, this question really extends beyond just shopping centers, which we might focus on. It's about high streets, it's retail parks, it's outlets, even department stores, because they embrace obviously other brands within their space, and many other configurations of that. So the reason it's so important is this relationship has been rocky over the past few years. It's been rocky beforehand, but obviously the pandemic has increased that tendency towards the complex situations. But as you know, I break things down into their simplest form. That's what I like to do. One is, it's very simple. Firstly, business is simple. It is people that make it complicated. So human beings, when they get into this situation of, I am better than you, or I can do this better, I can charge a higher rent, I don't want to pay a higher rent, whatever, that's when it gets complicated. And I think if we can go back to the basics of the way in which this industry was created, and if I may just very briefly I just want to touch on a couple of people, a couple of individuals to set the scene. They are firstly Herb and Mel Simon, who, as we know, were the founders of the now known, Simon Property Group. I had the privilege of meeting Mel and Herb over many years at ICSC in Las Vegas. When I went to see them, and I think this is one of the keys, they just said to me in one of the first meetings we had, I was at Foot Locker at the time, they said, we love our retailers, we love our tenants. Now, how many times have you heard that we actually, a CEO of a major company says, I love my tenants, I love my retailers? I've never heard it apart from with them. And the other extension of that was a guy called Jean-Louis Solal, who developed the shopping centers in France. He brought the American concept over to Europe and developed a major shopping center in Paris and many others after that. And Jean-Louis Solal was also one of those of that generation who had this love for the tenants, the love for the retailers. And he would talk for hours about that relationship. So without going kind of in various different directions, I would say if we can get back to that point of the landlords loving the tenants loving their landlords, because it works both ways, it will make for a very different landscape and a very different environment for that to happen. So I think it would be great if we could just end up in just caring for each other within that configuration. And then finally, I would just say it starts from the CEO. So the CEO is just as important as the rest of the teams, whether it's the landlord side or the tenant side. So that's just setting the scene for it. I'm sure my colleagues all have other thoughts around that as well.
I'll jump in there, Chris. I do agree as well. I always feel that the best business relationships are when they're a partnership. There's too much of client and supplier mentality, and you do have an imbalance of power there. This is very symbiotic. You create a shopping mall, you need to fill it with retailers, and retailers need to be in spaces where lots of people go. So you have that need for each other. And I always think it's a shame when an imbalance comes through there because you have one of them wielding a big stick. And you end up with an imperfect relationship and it doesn't benefit you. You do need a win-win, but you also need a relationship where you work together in partnership and you share good and bad times, feedback, and you can work strategically together. And I know it's an ideal and a lot of companies will be quite cynical about it, but you've seen how it works. I've seen how it works. And it would be great to see where you have these situations where people go, we're in this together. Mm-hmm. Let's work together and share together, because it really is a 1 + 1 = 3, I think.
I think what both of you said is so important. And I know, coming from the retailer side from my first 20 years and now working, before I was negotiating my own deals, right? And it seemed to me that it was always us against them, right? So the retailers against the shopping centers. And since COVID, and right during that COVID time and right after, it seemed like, Ian, what you said, the symbiotic was there because the retailers knew that the shopping centers needed them. And so to drive people back to the center, they were more willing to work with us on making the rents more, just making them where the retailers could actually afford to be in there, right? Because they needed them. And now I'm seeing it kind of switch the other way again, because the A shopping centers are full. So it's supply and demand. And I just feel like that relationship, if it were on equal ground, and I mean, Ian, your point is just so well taken. And Chris, that now that I'm negotiating for a various amount of tenants, I see that it's kind of slid back the other way again, where the rents are astronomical. They're not willing to work with the retailers as much when they're not as successful. So I just feel like we all are on the same page. We help each other be successful. And the more we do that, the more we're going to see that everyone will be, right? And everyone will be making money.
Do you know what? And on that, and that's what I love. If they just trusted the retailer and brought them in, of
Yep.
course they would bring the big butts because they would drive that footfall. Everyone wants to win in this game. And that's what I never quite understand about fractious relationships. But Linda, even on that, obviously
Yep.
someone, as you said, your whole career's been around this kind of brand and shopping mall experience, and you've supported so many others.
Mhm.
How have you built that shopping experience to try and to allow those brands to keep those customers coming back? How have you done it? And I suppose how challenging is that for you right now?
Well, that's a great question, and I've thought a lot about it since you sent it over. And here's where I think everyone needs to look at to be successful in our industry, and that is, what is the lifetime value of our customer? What does that look like? And I was really blessed in my early careers in retail. I haven't been in retail my whole life, but when I was a little older, and Greg Ranker from Guthrie Ranker taught us about the value of the customer and what the lifetime value meant. And I think that if the shopping center looked at the value of the consumers that the retailers are bringing into their mall, and vice versa, that the retailers looked at the value of the customer that they're bringing in the mall, we're both on the same page. We're both looking for the same experience. We're both looking what? To drive traffic into the center. And if we work together to do that, both of us are going to benefit. In the last 4 days, I've been training retailers and shopping center executives together, and the light bulbs have come on with both of them, saying we do need to work more closely together to ensure success on both parts.
Can I just jump in? Because one thing that Linda has raised there, which I think also links to the previous question you posed to me, is unfortunately there's this silo of the landlords who believe the space is theirs, and therefore they do what they want within it without consulting the retailer or the tenant, who can basically say, I can help in this or this way. Now, inevitably, part of the question then becomes, if the tenant says, yes, I can help, is the landlord going to charge them for that? So we're back into this whole nebulous area of service charges and so on. But if there's a way in which both parties can actually discuss, whether that's a forum, whether that's a get together, whether that's Live My Life. There are many shows around the world where you sort of live somebody else's life or somebody else's experience. And if there's a way in which that could be created as a positive environment, and maybe it's part of a training program, and you do lots of trainings, Melissa, maybe there's a way in which that can be done. But if we can get to that point where, because another aspect which I just want to throw on the table is many of those, whether it's tenant retailer side or landlord or developer side, we've got a younger population that has come into both those sides, and they don't have the experience that those of us on this call, for example, have, where we have patience, we're willing to listen, to share, to understand. Everything seems to be a race, that everybody wants to get to the finish line faster. And there's that kind of, not to bring it down to a generational thing either, but I just think there's a big part of that in this whole process, and we need to get back to some sort of cross-pollination, quite frankly.
I add my 2 cents of thought on this. So when we're talking about win-win, it's not a matter of how we are sharing the pie. And it often becomes about that, right? There's a certain amount of money in between us. How are we going to share that? What it really should be about is, how can we make bigger pies, right? And that is what is missing, I believe, in a lot of these partnerships. No, why we're not sitting down and talking about what are all of the insights that we can put together to bring more consumers, more shoppers to our mall, make them spend more money, and service them better. That's the whole game, right? And I see a lot of malls that don't actually have enough insights about what's going on in the mall. Where is the mall traffic? How can we direct it in the right direction? How can we help shoppers navigate the mall better? And how can we use insights from each of the tenants to go deep in what is happening in one store and merge it, blend it with the insights from the mall, and all together we win, right? We make bigger pies, and we make our mall stand out, and we make it the best mall in the world or in the country, right? And I think win-win very often becomes a little bit about who wins and who wins a little bit more.
Yeah, you know what? You're so right there, Torben. Wouldn't it be a great world if we all actually supported each other in
Yes.
this industry? You know, whether it's the shopping malls or the high streets or the main streets that so many of these brands are in. And as
Yeah.
you said, just make the pie bigger. There's plenty of consumers to go around. And actually, on that, I suppose one of the leading trends, if we want to call it that, that's driving consumers and shoppers into these stores, whether again it's on shopping malls, it's on the high street around the world, is this idea of retail theatre, Ian. And I mean, you're someone that obviously go around the world with these incredible retail safari, and I suppose opening all our eyes, even through your post on LinkedIn, as to what's going on. Do you think it's something that more retailers should be focusing on?
Well, I always find this interesting because post-COVID, a lot of people were going, oh, the physical store is all about retail theatre and experience now. And I was going, well, it still generates 75% of all retail sales. So pardon my language, you still got to sell shit. You know, your store is still by far the biggest channel for sales. So I often say it's not experiential space, it's selling space. But beyond that, I think there are three unique aspects that come with a physical store that none of the digital channels can deliver. First of all, face-to-face contact with another human. And COVID taught us to appreciate that because we were denied it so long. You can touch and feel product. So if you think about picking fresh fruit, sitting on a sofa, trying on a pair of jeans, you can't do this. And online returns is one of the biggest issues, particularly in fashion, where it's wiping out profits. And then the third one is peripheral vision. Okay, if you go on the Nike website to look at a pair of Air Max sneakers, okay, you see the Air Max and then maybe 2 or 3 pictures of a couple of other things at the bottom they're trying to sell you. You go into a House of Innovation store on the Champs-Elysees in Paris, and there are 1,000 things to see. And humans are like magpies. We like shiny new things. The ability to upsell is exponentially bigger in a physical store than it is online. Online is very binary. It takes you on a linear path.
Yeah.
You can go in the store to buy the Air Max sneakers and come out with some football kit and a jogger and a hoodie and goodness knows what else, because the store has the ability to entice you into buying other things. So I turn around and go, these are the things you need to focus on. And theatre and experience are some of the things you can use to do that. But if you just create and turn all your stores into have fun and touch point and experience, you miss the point of also, as Linda's quite right, you've got rent to pay, you know. And I know that a lot of flagship stores do not generate income directly in their tills to pay the rent, and nor are they designed to do that, because they will generate sales online. They will generate sales in local stores because people will flock to, say, a London or a New York or a Paris for the experience and then go home and shop. And they do it on the sofa with an app in their hand, or they do it in their local store. So there's a ripple effect to those big stores, but you still have opportunities for sales. So it is great because that touch point experience and theatre, again, is something unique. The touch and feel that I talked about earlier, you can't replicate digitally. So by all means, utilize that, but connect it to sales in the store, but also the ripple effect of sales in other stores later on, and also through the digital channels, because we have a whole ecosystem in retail. I think the physical store is the hub of it, but it has to connect. So simple things like your price has to be the same online in store. Online only deals are a ridiculous idea, because a lot of people will check a price on the phone before they drive into the city to go to the store. And if it's £20, euros, or dollars more in the store, you just annoy customers because they're going, well, I thought it was this price and now it's that. So connect it all together. But the theatre is a unique aspect for the physical store, but you've got to remember it's sales and connections to the other channels that are just as critical now.
Just where you picking up on what Torben said there earlier on about making the pie bigger, which I don't think happens as much as it used to. And Ian, I'd be interested in your thoughts here, is when you're making the pie bigger, for example, in what you've just said around the experience in a store. Back in my Gap days, what we used to do, or the store personnel used to do, is if there was an item not in their store, they would identify which store it was in the city, make an effort to get, if it's well before, you know, digital and everything else. It's just like, how can I satisfy this customer by providing him or her with another store with an easy access they can go to, or if not, they would arrange, so Gap would arrange for the product to be brought over to that store and the individual could come back the following day or whatever. So that's also part of that pie being made bigger, saying that we as a brand are willing to service you and serve you. And how can we do that? By making your experience not only even more fantastic in that store, but getting better and closer to the brand overall. And I think that's just another maybe simplistic way, but it's so neglected, unfortunately, today. And for me, that is part of the theater, is the fact that you have this engagement with an individual in the store at a given time.
I completely agree. And it's this sort of endless aisle sort of phraseology that I've seen. And I've seen companies that offer technological solutions. And I went into a store to buy a rug for my house, and it was out of stock. And the lady stood there with a handheld unit, maybe an iPhone or something else. And she said, "We're out of stock, but the store in the next city has one. So we can either bring it to this store so you can collect it tomorrow, or we'll deliver it to your house." And I chose to have it delivered to my house. So there's wonderful technology that can keep sales that might have walked out the door otherwise. But also there are other holistic elements when we sort of talking about what Torben was saying was increasing the size of the pie. Is because you fragment services and outsource them, certain benefits get lost. And what I love about retail is 95% of it is common sense. You know, I'm sure you get it as well. People go, "Oh, you're such an, I can't believe you understand this." And I go, I've never worked as a retailer. I've never been trained at marketing. I was a salesman selling stuff. And to me, it's just common sense. Most of the solutions are common sense and think like a customer. And that'll get you 90% of the way there.
But I think that's the key, Ian, there in a nutshell. Think like a customer. So many brands bang on about customer centricity. And I know, Torben, we've had this conversation before. Actually, when it comes down to it, the customer's the last thing on their mind. It's about doing the new, you know, the new thing, implementing the new thing, trying to keep up with the competition. But the common sense definitely has gone out the window for a lot of brands over the last few years. I hate to say it, and it's going to get me into trouble, but I really do think it is. But in that respect, then, Torben, you've obviously focused on huge international brands over the last few years, marrying together commercial aspects with consumers. On Ian's point, then, do you kind of think we've made retail too complicated?
So, Melissa, you know I like to be a little bit controversial and provocative, right? So I'm just going to go out on a limb here. So, yeah, I actually think we lost track of what retail is. Essentially. You know, I believe that 97% of the world's population are normal people, right? They do like everybody else is doing. So when you conform to that, you're okay, right? So when companies today hire people, also in retail, they hire people with experience from having done the same before. So they're actually just repeating what we've already done before. They're not actually innovating. They're actually not adding something new. Back in the time in the early 70s, Phil Knight would only hire people that were not from the industry because he didn't want to catch up with Adidas. He wanted to get in front. He wanted to change the business. I believe in that, right? And all of the normal ones, they are right until the crazy ones come and prove them wrong. Right? So if you look in history, we went from horse carriages to cars, automobiles, right? Because Henry Ford said, yeah, people would ask for a faster horse, right? But he came with the car. Steve Jobs did the same thing with smartphones, right? Boom, the whole industry changed. Now, here's the thing. I think what we are really waiting for in retail is someone like Steve Jobs to come and reform the whole industry. No, why are we at all talking about retail? There is no retail, guys. You know, what Ian is calling symbiotic retail is about digital and physical stores coming together, right? I call it the shopperverse. I believe that's where consumers are. They're in the shopperverse. They want to float around freely, right? And business is by nature simple, like we've been discussing here on the call already. We're not here to complicate matters. Right. What business is really about is to create good vibe. So for me, bonding is a new branding. And if you want to bond, you have to use different tools than what we've been doing in the past. But here's the thing, the industry The retail industry is stuck in what it's already been doing for years, right? That's what Ian was talking about when we were conversing on one post the last few days. It's siloed, right? You have all of these silos, so they're doing the same thing. And for us to relate to things and make them simple, we have been branching out, right? Everybody's feeling comfortable. Oh, I'm managing the self-checkout, right? I'm managing the store experience, experiential retail. But here's the thing. It all has to come together in the shopperverse as one 360 experience. When Ian is talking about retail theater, yes, retail theater is good if it's part of a storytelling that belongs in a 360 experience. But if you just do it to lead consumers to your store one time, like it's amusement park, forget about it. You're wasting your money. What are you doing? No, we have to build those 360 experiences. I see so many stores that are trying to do any kind of experiential retail or any kind of crazy experiences, cool experiences in their stores, but they don't master the fundamentals. No, you come there, you don't get any service. There's no contact. People that are working in the store on their mobile phones or they're chatting with each other, right? The products are out of stock. Nobody took care of it. There's no price on the product. Hey guys, it's simple as Ian said. But we are making it super complicated. I think one of the things that went wrong was during COVID, we all thought that digital was going to take over. There would be no physical retail, right? But if you
did, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't.
You remember the call we had, Ian? No, we did the podcast. I said to you, anthropology suggests that we didn't change a thing. Consumers are just waiting to get back into store because it's a natural behavior. It's a social thing. Like Ian said, it's a contact with the product, it's contact with other people, it's seeing everything in a wider perspective, right? But now we have to do it from a shopperverse perspective, and that changes the complete game. And companies have not done that. They're trying to micromanage, they're trying to branch out and fix the branches, but the branches don't belong to the tree anymore. And that's the problem.
It's a really good way of putting it, Torben, as well. And kind of on that point, and I know we've snuck in a few examples here. What is the story right now with retail technology? Because part of the industry is driving it forward and banging the drum. But actually, from what you've all just said in the last half hour, park it for a moment. If our basics aren't correct, the tech is not adding anything. If anything, it's frustrating our consumers and our shoppers a lot more.
I work with new entrepreneurs and new brands now who want to launch in retail, and the AI technology, the self-serve, all of those things are frustrating them because they don't really have the money to implement some of these things. And quite frankly, I don't think some of them should. I believe exactly the way Ian does, that when it comes to buying, people want an experience. We proved years ago with Proactive, because Greg Ranker made us, that the consumer will shop with me today, with him tomorrow, in another store where they're selling another day. And all we had to do 20 years ago was provide the customer, be in the right center, in the right location, with the right products, not run out of them, provide great customer service, and they will buy. I sold Proactive near the end for $50 more than they did online. And guess what? We told the customers, you can buy it less expensive online right now. They're running a promotion, but guess what they did? They bought it from us because why? Because of our employees, the experience, the training. They wanted to interact with someone. You can have a higher average order value in store than you can online. And you are dead right. We have proven it time and time again. Amazon may send me a note that says, oh, Linda, we found this product. Or if you bought this, do you want to buy this? I never buy it. Do you guys, do you ever buy that extra item? No, but if someone, while I'm at the store, says, oh, Linda, that blouse looks so good on you, I have the perfect pair of pants to go with it.
You trust them. Yeah.
No, you're going to buy it. You're there.
Yeah.
You're there.
The power of people.
I would like to add one thought. No, I'm a big fan of Phil Knight after 10 years with Nike, so I'm a bit brainwashed, no, but I hope in a good way. Phil Knight said, technology is never the solution.
Right.
Technology is a means to a solution.
Yep.
You know, and this is where it goes wrong for most companies, because technology is being viewed as a solution where you don't have a strategy. You know, you start with a strategy, you're putting together your 360 experience, and you're in every moment of truth looking at how do I want to serve the consumer in a way that can build bonds with the consumer in the best possible way. And if technology fits there and it's actually adding value to that moment of truth, then you introduce it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you don't, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I've ranted about in presentations and online a lot. You know, when we look at retail media network, which is a great example, that and AI are the two buzzwords in retail, where from a technology point of view, and everyone's got very excited. And retail media has created a lot of excitement because of the opportunity for ad revenue, primarily. And I've seen lots of posts about how some brands are talking about the ad revenue. But the challenge I always have is the system alone. The system alone is a delivery mechanism. Okay, a very clever integrated digital high definition screen network does the same job as a printed poster. It delivers a message. There is nowhere near enough conversation about the messages that are being delivered. Okay, so your ad sales team are getting all excited. Oh, revenue's going to be up. The CEO is really excited, and he's getting these companies to stick screens in the stores. I have not seen a good use of one of those screens in having the right message at the right time in the right place. I mean, I went to a Tesco store about 5-6 months ago, and I wrote a post on it, you know, and there were 4 bits of content, and all of them were flawed for different reasons. Wrong place. One of them was telling you to go to the aisle when a pallet of the product was literally underneath the screen. And I saw this in 4 Tesco's, and all of them had that pallet underneath. One was a QR code with no call to action reason. One was to promote chocolate that was 10 aisles away. So by the time you turned around, you bought pet food and washing powder and forgotten about chocolate, you know. And this is Tesco's, who to me are one of the cleverest, most sophisticated retailers in the world, and certainly in the UK. And I'm going, this is basic. And so you look at this and you're just going, as Torben was saying, everyone gets excited about the technology. That technology, you know, I mean, I worked for 20 years selling in-store communication, secondary sighting, shelf enhancements to sell products. And you used to have to fight like crazy to get another £5 budget per store to do that extra bit. And we all know the statistic from trade associations, 67% of our decisions are made at the fixture in the store. So you can go in on a mission, and 2 out of those 3 missions, you can be persuaded to buy something else, even though you're going in the store to buy one thing. And the power of that communication and persuasion on the shelf is so powerful. Everyone in the industry has known it for years. Suddenly we introduce technology, and the brands are now waking up and going, oh my gosh, we can influence sales in store. And you can see all these traditional people like slapping their head going, for God's sake, we've been saying this for 30 years. Stick a screen in, you suddenly get a hard on and you want to throw money at it, but you're still not doing it properly. You know, you need to, I mean, first of all, the brands need to partner with the retailers on this. Okay, and I'm sure brands, particularly in Greater, will have their arms twisted by the likes of Walmart, Tesco, Carrefour, all around the world, where the retailer is going to be going, right, we're just going to put this on the shelf. And by the way, can you just sign up for 50,000 worth of advertising on the way out? Now, if that advertising is in the wrong place at the wrong time, the brand will not sign up second time round. So suddenly you're going to have a load of screens running your TV ad because none of the brands are going to put content on. You partner with them. You work together. What worked? What didn't? Share the data, because some grocers are now selling that data back to the brands who gave them the money for the advertising. In one-sided, back to our first conversation about the symbiosis of relationship. You work together, and you have a long-term strategic relationship, working together, as Torben says, growing the pie. Otherwise, it's ad revenue, banging over the head, twisting arm to get money. It doesn't work. They won't spend second or third time. And it's just crazy.
Well, you guys have all said a lot, which I fully agree with. Rather than coming from a point of, I'm not a great fan of technology, as you all know, I'm actually going to surprise you, because we all like to surprise each other. I have to say that in a very recent experience, which was no less than yesterday, technology actually was of a benefit. As I was exiting a store, the buzzer went off, so I felt rather like a thief, but I knew that I'd paid for everything. And I walked out, and the security guard said to me, can I see your receipt? I showed him my receipt, and on his smartphone, he already had the item that was buzzing. So he could see, I saw a picture of it. I go, wow. So I could actually see, so he knew exactly what he was looking for. He could see that I'd already paid for it. It was smooth. There was no embarrassment, no issue, no nothing. For me, that's the kind of, we're not talking about being in the store itself, but that's the kind of experience, especially because security people are not known necessarily for being tactful, careful, gentle, whatever. But at the same time, they do get a rough deal with, some of the younger population who sort of do try on the one hand steal and everything else, but different conversation. But there, for me, the technology actually played out really well. And I thought, wow, this is not so much cool, but this was smooth. I was able to get out without any fuss, and he thanked me and said goodbye and everything else. So there is a place where technology has its role. The other one I would just add is, and this goes back to, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe, when Tumi was a client of mine, and Tumi introduced iPads into their stores. And we could all sort of think and go roll our eyes on iPads, that's sort of has been, as it were. But the iPads were in the store to actually engage with a consumer, and a consumer who didn't necessarily know, because Tumi, as we all know, has a higher price point than, say, a Samsonite, for example. And they were looking for a new customer, young professional, female as well, because it's always been a very male-dominated brand. And that iPad was able to, through the staff, explain to those in the store who came in to shop what the brand was about, the wider offer that wasn't always in the store, and what other opportunities they had to get in at a ground level on the store. So for me, that was a good example also of just how you embrace both at the same time in the store with the customer, talking to them. And it actually showed over time that there was a new demographic that was becoming more engaged with the brand overall. So I just thought I would surprise you by being positive for a change, as opposed to being negative about it. So Linda, it's over to you.
So we all know, being in retail for as long as we all have been collectively, that you've got 3 seconds to gain someone's attention on whether they want to stop in your store. And that's by your merchandising, your outside look in. It's exactly what you talk about all the time. How are you engaging with people to look in the store? For us, being on a kiosk or a cart, it was like, how are we going to get people to stop when we're selling zit cream, right? And it doesn't matter what you're selling, but for us, that's a difficult product. Anyway, long story short is that we put televisions on the back of the kiosk. The mall, the developers hated them. They're like, oh, you can't do that. People are going to be watching TV. They're not going to pay attention. Da, da, da. But here's what we did. We put Diddy on the screen. We put Avril Lavigne on the screen. We put Katy Perry on the screen. And guess what they did? They stopped, looked at the television, came over, and then we could say, Ian, let me tell you a little bit about Proactive. So digital screens, televisions, all of those things. What is your end game? Our end game was to grab people's attentions in 3 seconds and make them stop. Either come in the store, stop at the car, stop at the kiosk. So I think technology plays a part. And is it to drive the consumer interaction, which is what it was for us? So I think there's a place that they play, but it has to be to drive sales, which, Ian, it just goes back to what you said originally. And that's what I try and communicate all the time. It's about interacting with your customers and selling. So
I love it. I love it. And on that note, if you've enjoyed today's tea bar, could I let it that bit? If you've enjoyed today's podcast, like and share it, because I'm not able for these 4 incredible retail experts. Remember, you can listen back to past Retail Tea Break episodes on your favorite podcast platform, or of course on YouTube. If you haven't already, why haven't you connected with these 4 incredible human beings on LinkedIn? Because their knowledge, their expertise, their stories, their animations, their photos will really add to your learning. So do please connect with myself and today's guests on LinkedIn. I'll obviously pop their details in the show notes, and they can of course be found on theretailadvisor.ie. Wow, this was fun. Linda, Ian, Chris, Torben, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank
for having us.
you.